Hi guys, good afternoon, evening, or whatever time it is right now that you're watching. This is my buddy Matt Jarrin.
Matt, nice to meet you. It's good to not see you guys, but it's good to be here, bro.
Yeah.
It's good to be here. I'm not gonna lie.
So what's funny, if you don't know this, Matt and I have probably been friends for, dude, like how long have we been friends here?
Dude, okay, so me and this guy met when we were in the 4th grade in elementary school, and dude, like, we didn't hang out. Like, we didn't hang out that much until maybe like the end of our 7th grade year. So
yeah,
it's been a while.
Dude, yeah, like
I think I might have to count on my fingers. Actually,
yeah,
I'll have to count
really
on my
is that,
fingers,
yeah.
man. Like, that's how long.
Yeah, no, what's funny is I remember the first time this guy and I hung out, it was like straight up at like no, it was at Universal, right? We were doing parkour, remember?
That's a funny story, bro.
Wait, do you remember like you like hit a kid like when we were doing parkour?
Yeah, I was trying to clear like a, I was trying to clear like a little literally like a little, one of those like little stand pole things.
Yeah.
And I was like trying to clear it, and like as I was trying to clear the pole, like I full sprinted to it and jumped over. I almost like kicked a kid. I almost took a kid out, and then that's when I kind of figured out we needed to stop.
Yeah. So you can see really like why we're friends, because we're just goofy dudes. But yeah. So today, I think one of the things, if you guys saw on Instagram, just different posts, we're gonna do a funny video, like kind of weird video skit too. But one thing we do want to talk about is kind of the call of ministry. What does that look like? What does that even mean, right? And I think one of the things is so many times as ministry people, we can kind of feel almost like, dude, like, is my call to ministry like the for real deal? Like, is this legit? You know, I'm sure you've kind of had to face that before too. So yeah, we want to kind of talk about that, you know, kind of see like, dude, how do we know? How do we kind of see that we are called to ministry? How do we even understand that? So I guess like one of the first questions I would ask is like, Matt, how did you kind of know specifically you were called into ministry? How did that go about for you?
So I think for me, man, like, honestly, like whenever I share my testimony and whenever I share about ministry and how I got into ministry, it's honestly like Jesus just called me out, dude. Like, he called me to do it. Like, and I know because it was very personal and it was in a super intimate level, you know? At the time I was going through like just bad things, dude. Like I was in a really dark time in my like life, and it was going towards the end of my junior year, and that's just when things were like plummeting, dude, like bad. And you know, dude, we're part of each other's testimonies, and it was just not going good, man. Like, I knew like in the direction I was going, like I knew if I kept going in that direction, I'd be dead or in jail, dude. Yeah. Like, honestly, bro, like I'd be somewhere bad right now. I already know. And so in that situation, I was doing my own thing, and I was just following what I wanted to do. But at that time, dude, like Jesus met me where I was at, and he called me, and he just met me where I was at, and he told me, you know, like, follow me, you know, like I want you to follow me. And the same as how Jesus called Matthew the tax collector. Like, Matt was just doing his thing, right? Like, he was doing his job, and he was doing what everyone hated him for, right? Like, dude, he was a tax collector. Like,
Give me your money.
Was ripping people off, like, you know, and that's kind of like how my life was. Like, dude, I was just living it for myself, and I was just being selfish, and just not really using my head, you know. And I wasn't doing anything for Jesus. And then just how Jesus called Matthew the tax collector, he came into my life, and he called me, you know. And that's when I knew, because it was something that I never saw myself doing. You know, I knew his reality, and I knew that it was God, because it was something that I didn't desire, like flesh-wise, but that's something that he desired for me. And then that's when I started to realize, like, this is totally God. Like, and then I got into ministry. I took that step of faith, and I just went, you know, and I just went for it, and I did it. And I started getting involved, and I started really like digging deep in my relationship with Christ. And I started to realize that the reason why he's calling me into ministry was because that was a thing that was not my strong point, you know. Like, that wasn't something I was strong in. I definitely couldn't rely on myself, and I couldn't just be dependent upon myself, but I just had to be fully dependent on him. And I think that's why he called me into ministry, because he was just like, you know what, like, you're not going to be dependent on yourself. You're not going to be able to do things on your own strength, but you're going to get through within my strength. You know, like that's God talking to me, and
Right.
that's what He was telling me. And I was just like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's how I got the ministry, man. That's how I believe that everyone has a calling in ministry. Everyone does. You know, everyone has a calling upon their life, and it just honestly just depends when, you know, like when God calls you. And I honestly believe it's now. You know, God's calling us now, all of us, to minister and to just do our part in the body. You know, especially for saved. Yeah.
Well, what's funny is like, dude, like, honestly, like, dude, right now as you guys are watching, like, we're seriously just coming back from just a day of running around, right?
Yeah.
And we haven't like practiced at all, but like,
No.
yeah, seriously,
Yeah,
what's amazing is like you just hit on two literally specific points I was like even praying about talking about. It's like, you know, first off, like, I think we're all called to ministry, you know,
Yes.
all of us. So like in the Bible, literally you read it, it says you are called that you would abide in Christ, right? And that's all of us. All of us as Christians are called to ministry, you know, and a lot of us think, I'm sure you felt this before where people say, oh, if you're not like working in a church, if you're not doing this full time, you're not in ministry. And that's so not true. You know, God calls us to minister wherever you are, you know, wherever you're at right now, you know, watching YouTube at home. You know, it's just, but, you know, we're all called to, in a sense, you know, be ministers of Christ. We're all called to serve God in that aspect of, man, Lord, we want to be for you. And then also that second part where, man, God, it has to be dependence upon the Lord. You know, we have to all be dependent upon God.
Seriously,
right?
bro.
So I think that's a big thing is, you know, one is like, dude, we're all called to ministry. We're all called by Christ. And then two, you know, really, it's a dependency on Christ. It's dependent upon God.
At all times.
Yeah.
There should never be a time or a point in time when you're in ministry and you're not dependent upon God. Like you're not fully dependent on God and who He is. Because then that means you're just like comfortable. And that's like a bad situation. That's a bad place to be.
Well, what's funny is like, even as Matt and I were just driving earlier, we're talking about like how there's kind of seasons of like nervousness where you're just kind of like, oh man, like, dude.
All the time.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous.
But one thing I always think is like, it's so important to, not in a sense where you want to live in fear, but you want to kind of understand that, hey, you know what? Even through this nervousness, I am dependent upon Christ. You know, we're talking about worship. If you walk up there and you're like, dude, I'm about to murder this set, dude.
I'm about to lay out this track so hard.
You know, like,
I'm about to play Reckless Love so hard.
Dude, but exactly, you know, and it's that same sense where you want to be able to lead worship or teach God's word or wherever you're at, in a sense where you're just depending on God, but also loving and trusting in Him. So so that's a really good point. And then I guess my other question is, you know, when you go through ministry, and you guys, all of us do, again, it's not about where you are, but as you're following Christ, you're all going to face seasons of feeling almost unassured of what God has called you to do. I know in my life, there's plenty of times where I've gone through I've walked through a season and felt like, man, God, are you really calling me to this? And I guess my questions for you is like, how do you personally kind of look into like, God, is this what you've called me to do, or is it not? You know, how do you kind of pray about that and kind of walk through that?
Yeah, dude, I get you. So I guess like honestly, the more you spend time with God, dude, like the more you spend, I don't know why we made awkward.
I love this guy.
Dude, yeah. Honestly, the way I know that this ministry is like, the way that I know that I'm called to ministry is just honestly spending more time with God. Like as I spend time with God and as I really spend time in His presence, like that's just where I want to be all the time, and that's where I want to lead other people, you know, like around me. That's where I want to lead people around me, is to the presence of God, because in the presence of God there's joy, you know, there's love, peace, kindness, you know, like there's all these things, right? And in God's presence we're filled, and that's why like when I see people on a daily basis that are just broken and just like, and just they feel like empty, you know, and they have that emptiness. It's just like I want them to experience that fullness, and that's in the presence of God. Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know, like I would say that I know that God has called me to ministry in the ministry that I'm serving in now, because that's where, you know, that's just where He's calling me to serve, and I know that we're all called to serve. And for me, Downey has just been where, you know, I spent most of my life, like most of my childhood, and that's just where he has me at. That's where he has me serving, and in anything, man. Like it could be anything, like youth ministry, worship, cleaning, bro. Like I honestly, like, I just know like that's the body that God has called me to serve and love, and so that's why all of us are called. Like we were saying earlier, all of us are called to ministry, and if God has called you in a certain place, to do that, then you know that's where it's at, man. I mean,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like I'm like we didn't prepare for this, so I'm just like, you know? But yeah, man. I mean, honestly, you're spending time in His Word. You start to realize, and the more that you pray and you have that communication with Him, like He's your dad, you'll know, man. Like you'll just know if you're in the wrong place. You'll know if you're in the right place. Yeah. Because He'll let you know. Yeah. Like legit, He'll let you know. Get out of there.
Yeah. So I guess that really is kind of what we wanted to talk about today. Is the call of ministry, and the call of ministry is one that is, man, a beautiful thing because you know we're all called to love, to minister, and to pour out Jesus to others. You know, Matt and I, we've been friends for, you know, forever, you know, a long time. But what's amazing too is like him and I grew up together in that sense where, you know, we did not, like in junior high, we're not walking around like, dude, we're living for the Lord. You know, we're just like goofy kids, you know, running around. But how God has called us out now from that position to where it's like, dude, we want to serve the Lord with all our heart. And I think that's the biggest point is that, man, to love the Lord, serve Him with all your heart. You know, and that's the biggest thing, like Matt was saying, is like we're called, you know, and we seek the Lord upon what to do. And He makes it known. He makes it so known what He wants us to do. So, you know, again, to kind of look at what it is, dude, we're called. All of us are called. You know, we're all going to be dependent upon Christ. And, dude, really to seek the Lord on what He has called you to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that's beautiful. That's what it's all about. But that's all the time we have for today.
I love you.
But we're going to also do a funny video, goofy video later. But we just wanted to shoot this out for you guys, too.